Welcome to our channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave comments. Originally from a small town in Southeast Asia, Mr. Anand had spent years working far from home in search of a better life. Everything began nearly 4 years ago. At the time, Mr. Anand was around 30 years old and worked at a processed food factory in a remote area far from his hometown. Life wasn't particularly comfortable, but he was content because he had managed to build a life for himself. Then, one day, without warning, the factory where he had worked for years suddenly shut down. Overnight, Mr. Anand found himself unemployed. The small amount of savings he had was nowhere near enough to support him in the city for long. It left him with very few options. One of them was returning to the hometown where he had grown up, but he didn't want to go back. The truth was that his hometown was filled with memories he wanted to forget. Both of his parents had passed away, and he had never been especially close to the relatives who still lived there. All that remained for him was an old wooden house, a place he had never imagined returning to. Reluctantly, Mr. Anand returned to his hometown and the old house that had become his last refuge. At least he no longer had to worry about paying rent. As soon as he arrived, he began cleaning the house, repairing the leaking roof, and fixing everything else that had fallen into disrepair over the years. Once the house was finally in decent condition again, it was time to look for work. At first, he spent every day searching around the area for jobs, but whether he checked the local market or the small neighborhood shops, no one was hiring. He continued searching day after day until, little by little, he began to lose hope. Then, one afternoon, while stopping by a small grocery store in the middle of the village, he mentioned to the shop owner that he had been looking for work for a long time without any success. "Jobs are really hard to find these days," he said quietly. The shop owner fell silent for a moment before replying, as though an idea had suddenly come to her. She suggested that Mr. Anand try the chicken farm at the far end of the village. The owner was looking for someone to guard the property at night. The work wasn't difficult, just patrolling the chicken houses and checking the warehouse. Mr. Anand wasn't particularly interested. He really didn't want that kind of job, but at the same time, he knew he had very few options left. In the end, he decided to apply for the night guard position at the chicken farm. The farm stood outside the village along a dirt road and covered a surprisingly large area. There were 5 long chicken houses, and near the entrance stood a warehouse used for storing chicken feed. During the day, the farm was fairly busy. Around a dozen workers took turns feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, cleaning the houses, and repairing damaged sections of the property. But once evening arrived and the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, the workers gradually headed home one by one, leaving behind only silence and the overwhelming stench of chickens drifting across the entire farm. When Mr. Anand met with the farm owner, the man carefully explained the details of the job. At night, only one guard remained on duty, because there was far less work than during the day. His main responsibility was to patrol the chicken houses every hour, making sure no doors had been left open and checking whether any wild animals had gotten inside. He also needed to inspect the fences surrounding the property to prevent wild animals, or even thieves, from entering the farm. The owner explained that they had once assigned 2 guards to the night shift. However, whenever 2 guards worked together, they often became distracted, spent too much time chatting, or sometimes one would fall asleep while the other covered for him. Eventually, because of these problems, the owner reduced the night shift to a single guard. After discussing all the details, Mr. Anand, having almost no other choices left, accepted the job without much hesitation. Once everything was settled, the owner handed him a flashlight and a ring of keys and told him to begin work that very night. Mr. Anand could understand why the owner preferred to hire only 1 guard. Even so, deep down, he felt uneasy about being left alone in such a vast place in the middle of the night and couldn't help wondering whether he had made the right decision. His first night on the job passed in silence and loneliness. Mr. Anand walked through the farm, carrying only a flashlight as he made his patrol rounds. At night, the chicken farm felt deserted and unsettling. Everything was deathly quiet. During the day, the chickens constantly squawked and made noise, but once darkness fell, they all settled down to sleep. Not even the faintest sound could be heard. Following the owner's instructions, Mr. Anand continued making his rounds every hour. Everything went normally until the midnight patrol. As he approached the last chicken house, he suddenly stopped in shock. The flock of chickens inside had erupted into frantic screeching, as if they had been frightened by something. The moment he heard the commotion, Mr. Anand rushed straight into the coop. He swept his flashlight across the area, searching carefully, but found nothing unusual at all, except for dust drifting through the air and the chickens, which had already calmed down and gone back to sleep as if nothing had happened. Mr. Anand didn't think much of it. He assumed it was just chickens being chickens. Who knew what went on inside their tiny brains? Just like that, the first night ended without any other strange incidents. But on the following night, at almost the exact same time, while he was once again patrolling near the last coop, the chickens suddenly began fluttering and squawking again, just like the night before. Mr. Anand hurried inside and shined his flashlight around the coop, but once again, he couldn't find anything strange. This bizarre incident continued for several nights in a row, and every single time, it ended the same way. Nothing was ever found. It was now the 6th night since Mr. Anand had started working there. The sky was dark and heavy with clouds. Strong winds swept across the farm, and it felt as though rain could begin pouring down at any moment. At around the usual time during his patrol, the chickens in the last coop suddenly exploded into terrified cries once more, fluttering and squawking wildly. But this time, Mr. Anand barely reacted. After witnessing the same thing night after night, he assumed the chickens were simply startling themselves for some unknown reason. Still, he needed to check, so he slowly walked toward the coop. And that was when he noticed something strange. The door had been left slightly open. That immediately struck him as odd, because during his previous patrol an hour earlier, the door had definitely been shut tightly and securely locked. The instant he saw it, Mr. Anand quickly pushed the door open and shined his flashlight inside. Dust filled the air inside the coop. Half a dozen chickens had crowded tightly into one corner, huddling together as if they were terrified of something. At first, Mr. Anand thought it was probably a snake or some kind of wild animal, so he cautiously stepped forward. As the flashlight beam swept across the coop, it caught something unusual. What he saw made his stomach tighten instantly. A woman. She stood silently in the corner of the coop with her head lowered. Mr. Anand froze on the spot, unable to move. Who is this woman? Where had she come from? How had she gotten in there? Could she be the thief the owner had warned him about? But before he could do anything, the flashlight in his hand suddenly went out. Everything around him was swallowed by darkness. Mr. Anand was so terrified that he frantically shook the flashlight while his heart pounded violently as if it were about to burst from his chest. Then, only a moment later, the flashlight flickered back on. Trying desperately to steady himself, he slowly opened his eyes and looked toward the corner again. But the woman was gone. The exact spot where she had been standing moments earlier was now completely empty. She had vanished. Panicked and confused, Mr. Anand quickly turned left and right, sweeping the flashlight across every corner of the coop, desperately searching for the woman he had seen only seconds earlier. But no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find her anywhere. Everything became silent again. Even the chickens had gone unnaturally still. And then, something unexpected happened. A strange sound echoed from directly above his head. The moment Mr. Anand heard it, his entire body froze, slowly, very slowly. He lifted his head, and the sight before him filled him with absolute horror. The woman was there. She was sitting high above him on a wooden beam, swinging her legs back and forth. Her head hung low as she stared down at him with a horrifying smile stretched across her deathly pale face. The instant he saw that, Mr. Anand realized something impossible. There was no way that woman could have climbed from the ground all the way up to the beam so quickly. There wasn't even a ladder. Overcome with pure terror, Mr. Anand didn't hesitate for a second. He turned and bolted out of the coop as fast as he could. The sound of his shoes pounding against the floor echoed loudly, startling the sleeping chickens awake once again. The moment he escaped the coop, Mr. Anand ran with every ounce of strength he had, sprinting out of the farm without daring to look back even once. The next morning, however, Mr. Anand decided to return to the chicken farm one last time. Though still shaken by fear, he forced himself to speak with the owner and tell him everything that had happened the night before. His voice trembled badly as he spoke, his hands were ice cold, his throat tight with fear, and his words kept stumbling over one another. After finally calming himself enough to speak, he told the owner every detail of what had happened the previous night. His voice quivered the entire time, and his hands remained cold as ice as he struggled to get the words out. After listening, the owner let out a deep sigh. He led Mr. Anand to a nearby rock and gestured for him to sit down. Then he sighed again before beginning his explanation.
You're not the first person to see that woman. She used to work here. She died in that building.
The owner explained that she had once been an employee at the farm, a middle-aged woman who died inside that very building. One night, she had gone in alone to feed the chickens. However, the ammonia fumes inside were far too strong, and with almost no ventilation, she eventually lost consciousness. Since she had gone in by herself, nobody realized what had happened until other workers found her, and by then, it was too late. Ever since that incident, strange things had been said to happen to anyone working the night shift. Some people claimed they heard a woman crying. Others said they could hear sounds coming from inside, as though someone were walking around or working in the building. But every time they opened the door to check, there was never anyone there. And the most terrifying thing of all was seeing the woman herself. Sometimes she would stand silently in the darkness. Other times, she would sit high on the overhead beams, slowly swinging her legs, exactly as Mr. Anand had seen. Hearing those words from the owner instantly brought every horrifying image from the previous night rushing back into Mr. Anand's mind. At that moment, he could no longer deny what he had experienced. It was not fear, exhaustion, or his imagination. What he had seen was real. That very day, Mr. Anand decided to quit immediately and never return to the farm again. Before we wrap up, please subscribe to support this small channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss new stories. Thank you for watching and listening until the end. See you in the next video.